Good evening and welcome to the October 25th, 2023 East Lansing Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Bartley, would you please take roll?
Yes, I would. Commissioner Boyd?
Here.
Commissioner Denault? Commissioner Hendricks? Commissioner Lapine?
Here.
Commissioner Wagner?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Vice Chair Bowman?
Here.
Chair Sullivan?
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Chair Bowman,
Support.
seconded by Williams. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October 11th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes from October 11, 2023.
Moved by Commissioner Boyd, seconded by Commissioner Wagner. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That brings us on to item number 2, committee reports. Do we have any updates? We do not. Item number 3, staff reports. Mr. Bartley?
Yes, thank you. First, I just wanted to recognize our outgoing department head, Tim Dempsey. Tim was originally with the city of East Lansing for over 15 years, then departed in 2019 for about four years to go to public sector consultants. Came back this year in March to sort of make sure the Planning and Zoning Division and the Planning and Building Development Department overall stayed on its feet through a tumultuous time. He's recently accepted a position at Saginaw Future as the Senior Vice President there, and will start that position in about a couple weeks. So we've really enjoyed having him in the department. We'll miss him, and we wish him the best of luck. I also wanted to give you an update on the Senior Planner position. We posted that, as you know, the posting closed last week. We've received many very, very good resumes and applications from some very qualified candidates. So we're pretty hopeful about that. I hope to have some interviews starting next week, and I'll keep you guys informed on how that's going. As you know from the last Planning Commission meeting, the Board of Water and Light Training Center proposal at 683 Stoddard was postponed, or I should say, we had the public hearing, but the Planning Commission did not make any sort of motion, but rather recommended and asked staff to facilitate a neighborhood meeting between the Board of Water and Light and the neighbors. I've scheduled that meeting for November 13th. That's a Monday at 5:30 p.m. at the East Lansing Public Library. So we do hope to have, I've confirmed that the Board of Water and Light will be there, and Mr. Wagner, we talked about the Bailey Neighborhood or Bailey Community Association being there, so I'll be sending more postcards out to neighbors and also to the Community Association shortly, and we'll have that meeting on the 13th. And then you should plan on seeing that back to you potentially on December 14th or 13th, sometime in December, the Planning Commission meeting in December. Staff, including myself and an intern, are going to tour several renewable energy facilities tomorrow. This is sponsored by the Michigan Association of Planning. Focus specifically on, renewable energy production and generation. We do have some solar panel questions that have been coming up a lot from the ordinance, including next month we have a variance application from a local church asking to put a solar array on their roof that exceeds 15 kilowatts. And by definition, any solar power system over 15 kilowatts is considered utility scale. And so they require a variance for that. And they're asking for a 33.6 kilowatt system. So they do need a variance. The Zoning Board of Appeals has granted several similar variances recently, so we're looking at some potential ordinance changes coming in the next few months. So I expect our intern might be preparing some potential ordinance amendment language for you, and you might expect to see him at this meeting in December. Also, the last meeting, we had a question from Commissioner Bowman, I believe, about sidewalks on Merritt Road, and I just want to let you know I did follow up on that. the question was whether or not a user that had established their business on Merritt was required now to install sidewalks since they didn't at the time of development. And we followed up and found that actually it's on the city right now through various twists and turns. It's the responsibility of the city at this point to install the sidewalks if we want to. So I can certainly look into that in more detail and see, talk with DPW and see what their plans are, if any, to install that sidewalk right now. But I did want to update you on that. Two major items I wanted to talk about today in my staff report before we get onto the public hearing and old business is the master plan update and review, and also the 2024 calendar, none of which require action by the commission tonight, although you can choose to do so if you'd like. As you know, the master plan is, the Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires municipalities to at least review their previously adopted master plan at least every 5 years and make a determination of whether the previous plan should be amended at all, called good, or if a new one should be adopted altogether. So, as you know, last time I brought the Meridian Township Master Plan update to you for review, because they are in their comment period right now, which ends on November 14th. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, that was in its entirety, that draft update in your last packet. As is for this packet, the East Lansing Master Plan, the previous one that was adopted in 2018, is also in its entirety in your packet for your review. What I'd like to do is make some more substantive zoning ordinance amendments down the road, and that might have to do with housing, that might have to do with other sort of major community items or topics of interest. Before doing a major zoning ordinance amendment like that, I think it's a very wise thing to update your master plan, or at least take a look and determine if it's still, if anything needs to be changed 5 years in. So that's my proposal for the for a master plan update is not an overall master plan rewrite. In fact, not even looking at the whole thing at all topics, but really looking at our previous 2018 master plan that was in your packet, reviewing it, sort of trying to identify items that are high priority planning items for the city. And that essentially would just give us a work plan for the next few years as far as what kind of plans, what kind of items do we need to take a deep dive on. So far, the topics that I'm specifically interested in and have talked to several members of the community about are housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, or just all types of housing and housing diversity within the city. That's a big topic. I'm not sure how much we can cover in a master plan update, especially one that's at least intended to be somewhat quick and dirty. But maybe not dirty, but quick. You know, master plan processes can take several years if you do a full plan. I'd propose, again, a very limited scope of plan, just really reviewing the old one and determining what we need to move forward on. And then I'd also be interested in public health, particularly in light of global pandemic that happened, and climate resiliency. There's been a lot of changes that have become evident recently, and you know, we know that Michigan will be affected. East Lansing will be affected by climatic changes. We just don't quite know how, whether or not. I was just speaking to someone who was talking about coming to Michigan, coming to East Lansing specifically, and said, I'm looking for a climate haven. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Maybe that's what our outlook is a climate haven for the rest of the country. But obviously there are things happening in many places of the country and the globe, and so we need to understand how could this affect us and how should we change our built environment, if at all. So that's kind of my, I guess my initial thought on the master plan update. As you saw in your packet, the entire 2018 master plan is in there. I'd ask you to review it in depth. We can talk about it tonight if you'd like, but I would look for some sort of a vote to direct me and other staff on how we should proceed for the master plan update at the next meeting, unless you feel like making that vote tonight. But I did want to have the Planning Commission have time to review and direct us on how to proceed from here. So any questions about that process or anything I just said?
Commissioner Lapine.
It might be too soon, but Landon, do you have any, you mentioned wanting to take a look at public health as it pertains to the plan. Do you have any specific areas of public health that you're thinking about? Just what comes to mind for you on that?
Yeah, in my memo, I talked about how people's relationship to the city changed during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, when we were in lockdown mode, or even after that time. I don't have specific recommendations now. In fact, I'm trying not to, I guess, have too many ideas about how we go forward with that. There are a lot of different ways you can look at planning as it relates to public health. I'm not sure which of those is the most appropriate. And so I guess the idea with sort of the public health aspect of the master plan is to take a look, to understand how did the community fare, how do the neighbors feel, how do the students feel through that lockdown period and afterwards. And is there something we can do, should do as a city to sort of recognize that change in relationship and what needs to be done to, I guess, move ahead for the future. If it's a recovery, if it's a change of the built environment, if it's nothing, but at least take a look and understand what concerns are or needs are.
That's helpful, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay.
I don't think so. Gave us a lot to think about, so
Yeah.
appreciate the update.
So yeah, please do take some time and take a look at the old master plan. For those listening in or in the audience tonight, this is available in tonight's packet in full or also on our website. I would just ask that you please take a look and let me know your thoughts. For anyone in the audience, I'm always available to talk by email or phone or stop into the office and let me know your thoughts. I will also be, I intend to have some sort of maybe informal meetings outside of the Planning Commission discussion with any neighbors or students or anyone who's interested, just to talk about their feelings on the master plan and how we should move forward. So I'll try to have that done before our next meeting. Well, it'll probably be before our December meeting as I'm thinking about it, but that should at least inform us as we move forward. And I don't know if it would change your outlook or your decision as to what to do with the master plan. So with that, the last item for staff report is the 2024 calendar in your packet. I was asking for you to look at next year's dates. We sort of pegged the second and fourth Wednesdays like we've traditionally done for this commission and laid out the dates there. I called out major holidays, school breaks for both MSU and East Lansing districts. And also, you don't need to take a vote on that, but I just wanted to get those dates out to you so you have that and can check your calendars and make sure that you won't have any major conflicts with that calendar. And the last thing with that is that I did mention, I think it was last time, that I'm interested to explore ideas of changing the meeting time. I didn't get super positive responses from the commissioners when I mentioned that last time. And also I spoke with staff, including our TV crew, and they said, it actually takes quite a bit of prep work to put together the room in advance of a meeting. So perhaps moving it earlier in the day isn't such a good idea. I'd like to keep it on the table at some point for at least to stay in your mind, or on your minds, and perhaps consider that in the future. Or now if you are interested in it. But what I was getting from the commission last time was, let's hold and just think about it and maybe implement something in the future. So if that's accurate, I would say let's just please consider the calendar. If you'd like to move to adopt that tonight, feel free. Otherwise, I'd like you to take action at your next meeting in November. Any questions about the calendar? Okay.
Nope, no questions.
Thank you. That's my staff report.
Is there a motion to approve next year's agenda, or would we like to postpone that to the next meeting?
I'll move to well, I'll move to. I was gonna. If I move, we don't have to pass this, right? We can talk about.
We can discuss, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I rescind my motion.
Motion rescinded.
Sorry.
All right.
I have to talk to my wife first.
Smart move. Anybody else? All right, so I think we will discuss this at the next meeting. Thank you for your update. All right, that brings us on to item number 4, commissioner announcements. Are there any? Seeing none. Item number 5, communications from citizens, 5.1, written communications. I will note that there was 2 letters in our agenda packet for tonight, both regarding item 6.1 on the agenda. So that brings us on to item number 5.2, verbal from the audience. So this is your time to come forward generally on any item that's on tonight's agenda, but in particular, if you're here to discuss 6.1, it might be better that you wait until the time comes to discuss that item on tonight's agenda. And then just a reminder that speaking periods are limited to 5 minutes per person, and please submit a card with your name and information on it before you speak. All right, so at this point, are there any members of the audience that wish to come forward and address the commission? Yeah, no, I'm just, if you want to go now, you can, yep. Or if it's general comments, it's usually better to keep your comments to the public hearing portion of the agenda for that item on the agenda.
Okay,
You
yeah,
can address us now
I
if it's
have
something-
2.5
yeah.
comments here, so
figured,
I'll be quick
so-
here. So the first one is that after we had the rezoning request for the 7 properties on Grove Street, and then of course it failed here, and then it failed in City Council, and I think there was general recognition that we were probably going to be approaching a new master plan process. So I thought that was great. But as a result of that, I just took the time and I wrote in RM4 category. Because we don't really have an R4 in the zoning area, but the master plan references R4. So I just took the initiative to write what I thought would be appropriate, and what I've entitled it is Existing Neighborhood Redevelopment Multifamily Residential District RM4. And so what I did was I incorporated aspects of R2. RM8, RM32, RM14 to basically draft a new zoning use district, which I think could apply to not just the 700 block of Grove, but I think there are many sort of transitional blocks where it would make sense. And I think it would solve this conundrum that we have, that the master plan cites R4, but we have no definition of it, and we only have these sort of analogous statements. So some of the highlights are that it would be limited to blocks that are currently, the majority are rental licensed, unlikely to convert back to single-family owner-occupied. And so I put some limitations. It'd be those blocks that have 90% that have Class 3, Class 4, Class 5, and Class 6 rental licenses. That's just one piece. So I don't know what to do with this. I think my next step, but I'm looking for advice. My next step would be to, present it to or request City Council. I think they create an ordinance, sending it back to you. And I would just welcome it. I'd like it to be, the T's crossed, the I's dotted. And it debated, and hopefully we have something that will work for both developers, multifamily developers, and neighborhoods. I mean, the essence of it is that it keeps the projects within a scale that is less than 3 stories, kind of consistent. So that's my first point. The second point is on the Grove Street rezoning, and I'm just going to make my comments because I can't stay for the whole meeting. But I think that going to RM32 on that one property, 730. Is probably premature until we get the new master plan. It kind of is the same issues that we had for the west side of the block. City Council didn't really see that. So what I think is an approach that you could take. First of all, I'm not opposed to bed and breakfast on that site. I can't speak for other neighbors. We haven't coordinated or talked about this, but personally, I'm not opposed to a bed and breakfast there. I mean, a few limitations would be that it doesn't become an Airbnb, that it really is an owner-occupied residence, as a bed and breakfast. But I think a better approach is to really deny the RM32 and ship it to Zoning Board of Appeals to see if at Zoning Board of Appeals they could be allowed to do a bed and breakfast that removes the RM32 question, which is really going to be, I think, part of the master plan process there. And it lets the applicant approach it that way with still opportunity for public input. So with RM32, all the same arguments we made before. We don't know what it would be in the future. Yes, it says bed and breakfast now. I think last time at the meeting with the Board of Light, I guess I learned that you could put some conditions that it would only be a bed and breakfast for as long as it's a bed and breakfast. And once it's no longer a bed and breakfast, the zoning reverts back to R2. So maybe that's a possibility. But I'd chip it to the zoning board and let them request a zoning variance to allow a bed and breakfast in that zone. And then the third thing that I just wanted to comment, this is the half point, was Landon, I heard your comment about the comprehensive master plan. I was very pleased that we're going to be embarking on a master plan process, but I was disappointed because I think that you implied that what you're looking for is comprehensive plan light or comprehensive plan cliff notes. And I think you maybe haven't been in the community long enough to know. I think I think people want a real look at it in more detail than I got the impression. You probably didn't mean to say that, but you got the impression that really what you want to do is get it over with in the quickest way possible. And I think the community really wants to get into it. I don't think it should take 3 years. I mean, I'd say it should limit to a year, and maybe that's what you meant by light. But I think we really do want to look at the use district categories in some detail. So hopefully, I think that'd be my pitch to all of you is to really get into it in more than kind of a light version. Say, okay, what we did 5 years ago is still valid, and we'll leave it that way. So, okay.
Thank you. Mr. Bartley, quick question for you. So procedurally, if someone has a request for a zoning change or an additional zoning category, how should they submit that? Is it something that they should submit to you, or should they submit that to us, or just the city in general, and it should be assigned? Just a process question.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, do you mean for the zoning ordinance amendment that the?
Yeah, as he was suggesting, yeah. So he had a proposed idea for a new, I think R4 he had suggested and had outlined what that would look like. And
well, typically if it's a privately introduced amendment, that would be considered an amendment change like any zone change. The zone change is also an amendment to the zoning ordinance to the map. This would be an amendment of the text. So ordinarily, if we were to have a text amendment, it would be treated like an application for rezoning, essentially, where we'd bring it forth to the Planning Commission, introduce an ordinance at the City Commission, bring it forth to the Planning Commission for public hearing, and then a recommendation, then a City Commission hearing, and then City Council, and then decision. That said, I'm not sure how common it is, but certainly in other cities I've worked in, it's not so common to have new zone districts proposed by a private party. So typically the city might work with that party and say, okay, let's come up with something together. I think we can talk about it offline and consider a plan to move forward. Certainly, like I said, we're open to changing the districts. My concern is changing it too substantially without that master plan update. And I guess to clarify to my intent is master plan updates or master plan writing and drafting and community engagement can take several years. My intent is not to speed through the process, but rather to take time to have meaningful engagement, but limiting the scope enough that that we're not doing a wholesale rewrite of the zone or the master plan, rather just identifying the highest priority areas. So that's sort of my intent with that.
Yeah, appreciate the background. So it sounds like there's a process that would have to be, yeah, makes sense. All right, are there any other members of the audience that wish to come forward? All right. Seeing none, is there anyone online in the queue?
Waiting in the queue.
All right.
Chloe Halverson, I'm going to unmute you when you're allowed to talk. Go to the next.
On to the next one, yeah, sorry.
Jalen Hardiman.
Wait, Vice Chair?
It looks like they're still muted. I know you asked them to unmute.
I'm
but-
asking them to.
Okay,
unmute.
yeah, okay.
They're not responding.
Yeah, on to the next, thank you.
Jalen Hardiman, I'm going to unmute you and allow you to speak.
Yeah, on to the next.
Matt Carey, I'm going to unmute you and allow you to speak.
Hello, this is Matt. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is Matt from Pinnacle. We're just here representing the Mr. Car Wash project when this item agenda comes up.
Thanks.
N. Carstern, I'm going to unmute you and allow you to speak.
Hi, I'm also from the car wash, so we're just waiting for our time on the agenda.
Noted, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Carwash. All right. Well, I believe that concludes our communications from citizens portion of tonight's agenda. So that brings us on to item 6.1, a public hearing to consider ordinance 1525. Mr. Bartley? Oh, and before we do that, I just want to note for the minutes that Commissioner Hendricks arrived at 7:24.
Thank you. So this request is an application from Michael Zawacki to amend the zoning map to rezone a 0.3 acre parcel located at 730 Grove Street from R2, which is medium density single family residential, to RM32, RM32, which is city center multifamily residential district. What I've brought up on the screen here is our existing zoning map. The property is highlighted. I think my mouse is moving there. Yep. So 730 Grove is highlighted. That's currently, as you can see, in R2 zoning district. Adjacent zoning to the north and to the west across Grove is also R2. And then to the east, immediately adjacent and immediately adjacent to the south, are both currently zoned RM32, which is the proposed zoning district for this property. The applicant seeks to convert an existing building from a duplex residential rental unit, which is about 4,000 square feet, and proposes to create a bed and breakfast and also pave an existing driveway and expand it by about 10 square feet. This, I should mention that this an earlier speaker during public comment spoke about the previous similar rezoning request that was before you earlier this year for properties across Grove on the west side. And this is unaffiliated with those properties or that request. But still, it is a similar request in that it seeks to change an existing R2 zone district or zoned property into RM32 for a new use. The bed and breakfast use is considered a Class B rental. Class B rentals are essentially associated with uses like a bed and breakfast, but also fraternities and sororities, sometimes rooming houses, essentially where you have a living unit that does not include its own kitchen. Whereas a Class A rental would have its own kitchen. So it'd be a larger, like an apartment complex where each specific dwelling unit has its own kitchen facilities, but in a Class B, each unit does not. So the R2 zone district, the existing zoning, does not allow Class B rentals as a land use. The RM32 and, in fact, RM22 and 14 do allow the Class B. RM8 does not. Just a quick, I guess, discussion too about the future land use map. Also, just sort of responding to the earlier speaker, which is a great point. My arrow is off, but the highlighted You can see the highlighted parcel here with a little white border. The arrow is supposed to point to that, but that's where 730 Grove is. And you can see that it and the properties around it to the east, west, and south are called R4, which is a master plan designation for residential up to 16 units per acre. I guess the master plan designations are not typically exactly aligned to zoning ordinance districts to give the zoning ordinance some flexibility to come at sort of implementing the master plan and its recommendations in different ways and allow some creativity. So that's why we typically don't see an R4 zone district, but it may be an RM4 like the earlier speaker mentioned, or something different that might more closely get to the goals of the R4 district. For example, the master plan talks about the R4 designation being analogous to the existing zoning districts RM8 and RM14. RM8 being planned unit development residential and RM14 being low density multifamily residential. The difference between RM8 and 14, like I mentioned, is they're analogous to the R4. However, the RM8 designation, or excuse me, district does not allow for Class B rentals. The RM14 does, as does the RM32. The issue with the RM14 district, and I was talking about this with a representative of the applicant recently, is that the RM14 does not, or requires a lot width for a new use that is larger than the lot width currently on the property. I believe it's 75 feet. Now that's the minimum lot area for the RM32, and it's 60 feet for the RM14. So if you were to approve an RM14 request instead of RM32, I would advise against that somewhat strongly because rezoning a single property to a different zone district is not allowed by state law. So we'd have to change other nearby properties as well. I think that's my understanding is that was one of the reasons why the applicant suggested RM32 and not a different one. But also you'd be creating a non-conforming situation where you'd have a property that does not meet minimum lot width requirements for the proposed use of the RM14 or the other districts, but it does in the RM32. So based on those factors alone, it was our determination that the appropriate path for this request would be to request the RM32 and not a different district. One more thing I want to address, you brought up so many good points, sir, is the question of asking for a variance instead of a rezoning. East Lansing is somewhat unique in that its ordinance does not allow for use variances. So the only way to apply for a use that's not currently permitted in a zone district is either change the district or change the ordinance to allow that use. And so that's why we have this request for a zone change to RM32 rather than a use variance request, because it's simply not allowed. If there was some dimension that was problematic for this property, for example, if this were RM14 and they wanted to have the B&B Class B rental use, but they didn't meet the lot width requirements, which they don't, they could ask for a dimensional variance for those lot width requirements. They can't ask for a variance from the use regulations. So does that make any sense? Can I answer your questions about that?
Any
Okay.
questions about that particular issue?
By way
Vice
of
Chair.
clarification, thank you. I think you'd said that a single-use variance change, or excuse me, a single-use zoning change isn't permitted. But what I think you meant, if you did say that, is that unless there's an adjacent zone of a similar nature. So in this case, RM32 or its current RM2 seem appropriate because they are adjacent, whereas an RM14 would be basically a spot zoning change. And that, okay,
a single property spot zoning, I should say a single property rezoning doesn't equate to spot zoning necessarily, especially for larger properties. That's perfectly fine. It's just for a single sort of city lot size property like this one that we could see problems with state legislation.
Any other questions on that? No, seeing none at the moment. Appreciate your explanation, though. That was helpful. I was going to ask that question, so.
I think that really kind of covers the request, though. We did talk about impacts to traffic. The impact to traffic of the proposed use are not high enough to warrant a traffic study or traffic assessment. Let's see. Yeah, you know, and one thing, I guess, to the conditional rezoning question is, and yes, sir, the discussion from last time with the Stoddard property talked about this as well. An applicant can volunteer or voluntarily bring forward a conditional rezoning request, which would say, I am looking to change the zoning of this property for this specific use. And if you approve me for the rezoning, I'm only allowed that specific use. If that use were to go away, then the Planning Commission could take steps automatically to change the zone district for that property back to the original zoning. This request is not a conditional zoning request. It could be, but if that were to be the case, the applicant would need to withdraw their application and voluntarily come back with conditions and a conditional rezoning request, which is what we may see or may not see from the Board of Water and Light for that other question or other property that we had the questions about last time. And I'd only bring those up because this and that case are both somewhat good examples of where conditional rezoning might be appropriate. However, if conditional rezoning is, I guess, approved only to placate concerns from neighbors, which may be completely valid concerns, if it's only done for that reason, that can be a problematic decision because your rezoning, your conditional rezoning still has to meet certain standards for the rezoning of the property. Does this still align with the master plan? I guess, what purpose do the conditions make? And the conditions also have to be the only way that you'd approve that rezoning, and you wouldn't approve the rezoning for anything else without those conditions. If you do a straight rezoning as requested to RM32, yes, the Class B rental or B&B use as proposed would be allowed in that district, but so would any other use allowed in the RM32. So if you were to approve or recommend approval to the City Council next time, approval of this zone change without conditions, it would be other uses besides the B&B would be permitted on this property, subject to site restrictions, you know, size and setbacks and such. So I guess with those comments, I'd say that's what's before you today is a straight rezoning request for RM32. Yes, the proposed end use of the property is for a B&B, Class B rental. However, if you were to approve the rezoning down the road, it could be for any uses as permitted in the RM32. Does that make sense, and can I answer any questions?
I think so. I have some semi-related questions. I think the first one would be looking at the Google Street View, and I believe it was noted in one of our written communications about the driveway being paved. And I noticed that the driveway now looks to me to be a dirt driveway. Is that even a permissible driveway type in the city? I'm just not familiar with that ordinance. And are they planning to pave it? So two parts there.
Sure. As far as materials, pavement or pavement of many kinds or permeable pavers are allowed, like grass pavers or permeable pavement. Gravel or dirt is not for a new driveway. So what we'd look for is to bring this into compliance with the new use, should it be approved, we would have the applicant pave. Where it was mentioned in the application was in the traffic study. So in a traffic study discussion, I guess, there was a paragraph that just said, our client is seeking to have a B&B, 5 rooms with, and pave their driveway and expand it by 10 square feet. But I didn't want to get too much into the site details because this is not a request for a site plan. This is a request for a rezone.
Got it. Yeah. So would a site plan come separately? Is that what they're planning to do? They're planning to do this to rezone it and then come forward with the site plan?
Yes.
Do you know?
They could not bring an application forward for a Class B rental except for if it were rezoned, because that's not a permitted use in the R2 zoning, which is the current zoning.
Understood. So without getting ahead of my skis on this,
Sure.
how substantially are they looking to renovate that property? Are they looking to put a new property there, or just minor?
Honestly, I have no idea because I didn't ask, and they're not required to
Got it.
provide that information. My understanding is that they're seeking to renovate the existing structure, not tear it down, not redevelop the property entirely, but I'll defer to the applicant on the details of what they want to do. I would just caution the Planning Commission again, this is not a site plan review, this is a rezoning request, so you want to really make sure to focus your thinking more on the zone districts and what could be different or similar between them, and not so much the site plan.
Noted. But hey, I was curious, so.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And then my last question is, I'm trying to wrap my brain around the Class B rental and the distinction between what is a bed and breakfast. The city does not define bed and breakfast, does it?
No, it does not.
Okay, so there's no definition in ordinance of a bed and breakfast. Is there any requirement for, I guess, a Class B rental for the owner to be in the building when it's being rented?
No.
Typical to, because when you think of Airbnb, there's kind of, or short-term rentals, there's kind of two formats for those. One is, right, where it's just they're renting a house and a family comes in, and another one where it's a larger house and they're renting a bedroom. So both of those would be permissible under a Class B license.
Correct.
And
Where you see the owner-occupied requirement is, for example, in sort of lower numbered classes of rentals in the city, or in rental overlay districts, restriction overlay districts, where you might have the owner is required to occupy the house and can have up to one roomer, for example. But for this use, the Class B rental or Class A rental, the owner is not required to be on the premises, and the difference is whether or not each dwelling unit is equipped with kitchen facilities.
Okay.
Class A it is, Class B it is not.
Thank you. Appreciate that explanation. Any other questions or comments? All right, I believe we're ready for the applicant, if they're here.
Good evening. My name is Dan Lewis with VK Civil, so we're the civil engineering consultant helping Mike. Mike Zawacki is here as well, the owner. So we're here to answer any questions that you have. Ultimately, we're hoping to renovate it to a bed and breakfast, and trying to work through the nuances to get there. And I think he did a great job, like Landon did a great job, like RM8 isn't right because that's not bed and breakfast. RM14 isn't right because that's, I call it spot zoning, but it's similar to that. And it looks like from the future land use map, there's a distinction right at our north line of this future land use south of here is this, and from this line north is this in the future land use. So matching with the intent of that future land use with the fact RM32 is to the south and to the east, that would, in our opinion, align with the future land use map and the intent for this property. So really what it boils down to is we'd like to renovate the building to a bed and breakfast, and looking for your assistance to get there because we can't do it in R2. To answer some of your curiosity questions, we do plan to pave the driveway if this is approved and we move away from a student rental. If it stays R2, we're going to leave it as is. It's been there and grandfathered in, or however you categorize that. But we do plan to pave the driveway if approved, and minor improvements. So the outside of the building, no changes, minor renovations on the inside of the building, and pave the driveway. So just enough to kind of bring it into conformance with, well, not in conformance, but to get the bed and breakfast going on the inside. So super minor changes on the inside of the building, and paving the driveway are the only improvements we're looking at. But again, we're talking rezoning this evening. Yeah, I think Landon covered it well of what options you have. So we're here for any questions you may have, or we can go on to public comment.
Thank you. Questions?
This is probably more for the owner, but what's your expectation in terms of the intensity of the use if it gets, currently it's a 5. Sorry, thank you. I've got this right here, I should use it, right? The intensity of the use if it's changed from a currently, is it a 5, from its current use as a student rental, as a rental, to its use as a B&B? Your expectation in terms of, we know about the traffic, but sort of like I'll just say the intensity of the use.
You're keeping the same amount of bedrooms, right, Mike?
Yeah, nothing's changing there.
Yeah. And that played into the traffic count. You know, it's a book, my traffic engineer did it, you know, and so when you're looking at rental versus bed and breakfast, there is a click up in the use, but it's very slight. And then you got to think about, okay, the peak times are not summer, right? You care about peak times are fall at this, early summer. And if this isn't full all the time, then it's less than what the current use is. So it's hard to look at. Yes, if you go by the categories, it's slightly more, not more than the, requires a traffic study. But I think the real use is going to be less traffic because there may be a weekend when there's 4 rented, not 5, so.
Right, and there was also some indication that was going to be at off-peak times, that traffic increases.
Their coming and going does not conflict with the rest of the student housing coming and going, correct.
Any additional questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will open up the public hearing for item 6.1. If there's any members of the public that wish to step forward. Yeah.
Hi, I have laryngitis, so I'm Lisa Hominick, and you've got a letter, just a very short letter in there, and I just want to piggyback on the RM 32 ordinance that it could be anything because it goes with the property, as you're well aware. And I just want to keep it that way until we look at the master plan, revamp the ordinances, and then maybe revisit. That's all. Thank you. I live on 222 Ridge Road, and my backyard looks right into the end of their house. So.
Yep. So your concern primarily is with the zoning, and it's not with it being a bed and breakfast?
Well, not this moment. I'm more concerned about the zoning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I really haven't thought more on the bed and breakfast aspect, to be honest with you. I was just wanting it to keep consistent with all the information we had from across the street, that we wanted to look at the zoning, revisit that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to step forward? No, just your card up here, but.
Okay, well, I guess I will take my time to comment on this. So I was just looking at the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, I can't find it right now, but I think there's a window in the Zoning Board of Appeals because there is no definition of bed and breakfast, right? But that doesn't exist. And if I could just take one moment and find it, I lost it here, so I had it and I was reading it. But I think it does allow for a change of use. In what I'm reading under, I think it's the third power. Do you have that? Can you pull that up? Under the Zoning Board of Appeals, their powers, and I believe it's the third bullet. You might be able to get to it faster than I can. I had it on my phone and I somehow scrolled through it.
So, yeah,
Landon,
I don't know if we want to do that
No,
now,
I think it's important. I think it's an important point because
tonight,
because you said that they couldn't do a change of use. But I think the language under, I believe it's bullet 3, allows that to happen. So it says when there's no comparable use or something like that, that the zoning board has the power. Did you pull it up?
Yeah.
What is it? You're getting it. Yeah. I'm sorry, I had it here. If it can't go back to zoning, then I'm going to change the intensity of my opposition to the RM 32 thing here. So I was kind of a little calmer on that. But I think the concern is just opening this up, going to RM 32. Again, I'm not opposed to bed and breakfast at that site. It's the change of use because then that could become anything. It could become whatever, and we're going to be entering in this process of a master plan. Did you find it?
Yeah, and I'm happy to speak to that if you want.
Sure.
But if you have any
Yeah.
more comments.
I'm done.
So yeah, section 50-64, the zoning ordinance, talks about granting of variances and the board's power. And the exact text is, the board shall have the power to authorize, upon an appeal, specific variances from such dimensional requirements as lot area and width regulations, building height, bulk regulations, yard width, side and depth regulations, and off-street parking and loading requirements as specified in this chapter, provided, however, that all of the following variance conditions are adhered to, and that at least one of the special findings can be satisfied, and then it goes on to describe the conditions and special findings. So in the granting of variances section about the powers of the board, it specifically calls out dimensional variances but not use variances.
I'm looking at something different then.
Okay,
So-
I would love to talk to you about this after the meeting.
Well, I
if
think
that
it's
works.
important. Well, I guess this
you
won't
have to go,
this
but-
won't be the voting meeting.
No,
So we'll have a
that's
chance to
right.
check
We're
that
not
out.
voting
Yeah,
on it,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious of that myself. I
Yes,
just
okay,
don't know
yeah,
if we-
yeah, and I'll find it there. And then just lastly, my purpose of writing this RM4 was to solve this type of issue, with the master plan. So my goal would be to have my, RM4 vetted, changed, whatever, modified as appropriate by either developers or homeowners. And then when we do the master plan, then, it could be, this would be the type of use district that would go there, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the commission before we open it up to the online queue? All right. Anyone online?
We have two people that are in the queue that are not speaking on Mr. Car Wash. We have one person. Jalen Hardiman, I'm unmuting you and allowing you to speak.
I just don't think it's going to happen.
We tried.
Yeah,
The
we
other,
tried.
the other two
Thank you.
participants are here for Mr. Car Wash.
All right. Great, thank you. All right, at this point, we will close the public hearing and then move on to item number 7.1, old business, application for 2110 Merritt Road for a new car wash. Mr. Bartley?
All right. Thank you. I'm just going to pull up the map real quick. All right, so this request is a request from Mr. Car Wash at 2110 Merritt Road. This is at the northeast corner of the property. Here we go. Northeast corner of the city. This property is located at the southwest corner of the intersection of Merritt Road and Park Lake, just south of M78 or Saginaw Highway on Park Lake Road. And this was part of a larger project that was approved several years ago for properties to the south, which is currently, I believe, being developed as a cannabis store. This property is, the remainder it is the car wash site, roughly triangular shape. You can see that the zoning is B2, which is retail sales business. We've had a couple of presentations about this. The applicant took the recommended changes from our last meeting and incorporated them into their site plan. So now, essentially, their proposed site plan for this car wash meets all the requirements of the ordinance. The question is, this is a special land use request, and so if the use is appropriate, the site plan does generally correspond or conform to the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Rebecca, I know that Mr. Carey and Ms. Castern are on Zoom to give a presentation about this. So unless the commission has any questions for me about this request, I'll turn it over to them.
Any questions for Mr. Bartley?
Thank you.
Seeing none, I was going to ask about the updated site plan, but I can ask the applicant, so.
For what it's worth, I mean, I did replace any site plans that were in your packet from last time with the updated site plan. So everything that's in your packet is the most up-to-date plan.
Great. All right, I think we're ready for the applicant, if they want to give an overview.
Sherry, I did add you as a panelist so you can share your screen.
Yeah, this is Matt Carey, Pinnacle Engineering Group, 20725 Watertown Road, Brookfield, Wisconsin. We were there, I believe, 2 weeks ago and presented, the project generally, and Landon gave a pretty good overall synopsis of it at that time. Since then, we've addressed all comments to date. Those included both the Planning Commission staff report, as well as I think some initial staff comments that were issued just before the Plan Commission 2 weeks ago. So since then, I think the question was brought up about the site plan changes. I can share that one moment here. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, generally everything pretty much stayed the same for the overall site itself here. So circulation, access, everything has been maintained. If you recall, 2 weeks ago, there was some coordination and discussion about the southeast corner in this area right here, if you can see my cursor. That was geared towards this public water main that is located right here that goes to the south to serve the future Lot 2 user. Since then, we've worked directly with Mr. Car Wash to pull back the pavement and the proposed retaining wall so that it does not impact not only the water main itself, but also the public water main easement that parallels the water main there. So with that change, it was also beneficial to the site because it reduced the amount of retaining wall that was necessary, but also maintained the amount of parking spaces and vacuum stalls, which I know is critical to Mr. Car Wash. So in a nutshell, that was really the only change, other than some of the other few minor comments, which included adding some bicycle parking right here, and I think generally that was really about it from significant or any noteworthy changes from that point. So as I think mentioned earlier, Nicole from Mr. Car Wash is also on the line here, and we are happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Questions from commissioners? No, seeing none. So I think you outlined all of the changes that were made with these latest site plans.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, just confirming. Seeing no further comments or questions, I think the commission is satisfied with the explanation. Thank you.
Commission, your next step here is discussion if you'd like, but then you can make a motion to a recommendation to the city council, whose next step would be a public hearing and their own decision. So.
Yep, exactly. So I believe a motion is in order.
I think this is it. I make a motion to recommend approval of the special land use and site plan for Mr. Car Wash to construct a new car wash facility with an area of approximately 6,530 square feet with 24 vacuums and associated parking at 2110 Merritt Road.
Moved by Commissioner Lapine. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Boyd. All right, discussion. Vice Chair?
Just to clarify, would that also be subject to the conditions that are noted in the staff report, as would be typical?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Sure. Good confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments or discussion? Opinions? No, I mean, I guess I'll just say I think it's a good use for the site there. I think it's compatible with the gas station there that's across the street, and in particular appreciate that the entrance. It looks like it's easy to traverse between the two. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. So with no further discussion, I believe a vote is in order. So we'll just do a roll call on this one, please. Yeah.
A roll call vote?
Yeah.
All right. For 2110 Merritt, the motion was to approve the site plan as presented with conditions. Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Hendricks? Yes. Yes. Commissioner Lapine?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Wagner?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bowman?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes.
We have unanimous approval.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us, seeing that we don't have 8 on the agenda, that brings us on to number 9, commissioner concerns. Are there any commissioner concerns? Commissioner Lapine?
I have 2 maybe kind of comments and questions for Mr. Bartley, and kind of going on what Dan had shared last time. Neither of these were really mine, but are things that my neighbors have brought to my attention, so I'm just sharing them. So 2 pieces. One, I think that we've asked in the past to revisit, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know the formal way to say this, but to revisit during, I think 2020, there was a pilot, it was supposed to be a pilot, to change the parking allowances in the Bailey neighborhood to only be on one side of the street on certain blocks. And I think the understanding, at least from the Bailey neighborhood at the time, was that that was a pilot and we were going to see how it went. And I'm not sure that we've ever had any kind of formal discussion about the success or challenges of that pilot. So I'm wondering if we could talk about it at a forthcoming meeting. I think, Dan, you might have asked about this a couple times in the past.
It's slightly different.
Was it slightly different than yours?
That's fine. I'm aware of what you're talking about, but I didn't realize it was a pilot.
It was a pilot.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a pilot to see if it, my understanding was if it eased the ability of ambulances and fire trucks to get through the neighborhood when there was game days and things of that nature. But I'm wondering if we could just maybe have an update on maybe I'm wrong and it's not a pilot. But that would be helpful. The second piece is there's been considerable construction going on in Bailey neighborhood on the streets, and I'm assuming it's like the plumbing that's been going on since probably June or July, April. And there seems to be very little movement happening. And obviously everyone is experiencing significant workforce shortages across different sectors. But my question is really, could we get an update on the anticipated completion of that project? That's my first request. My second is, there seem to be sections of the neighborhood where the construction is done, but the signs and the sandbags remain in people's boulevards. And so I'm wondering, if the sections are done, could those signs and sandbags be picked up? And now I'm done.
Okay. All right. Thank you for those. Those are not going to be really, for the most part, within the realm of zoning. However, what I'd like to do, if it works for them, is invite staff from Department of Public Works to come to the next Planning Commission meeting and talk about both of those topics in some detail. And that will be in November, I want to say 8th, the day after the election, is the next Planning Commission meeting. As I mentioned, we have a scheduled meeting with Bailey Community Association about the Stoddard project on the 13th. So I think it could be a good idea to have the presentation from DPW on the 8th, and then the following week we could probably have some discussion about that topic as well at the neighborhood meeting.
That'd be perfect. Thank
Okay,
you.
sounds good. Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner?
I just have one quick question. We're supposed to have 9 members on this commission, is that correct?
On the Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we're down one. I mean, I'm looking, it says Chris is still on the commission, or, he's not. So are we down a person? Is that right?
Yeah, there are 8 commissioners right now, and we have actually just received an application for the Planning Commission, so we'll be bringing that potentially for appointment
Okay.
soon. We do also have some upcoming term-limited appointments, but the Planning Enabling Act and bylaws allow for the commission or commissioners to stay in their seats until a new commissioner is chosen. So I'll talk more about that in more detail next time, and also reach out to you by email to discuss those terms coming to a close. But we shouldn't see any major change anytime soon, except potentially one new commissioner coming on.
Thank you. Good question. All right, I believe a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved?
Moved by Vice Chair Bowman, seconded by Commissioner Hendricks. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:07 PM. Thank you.